What do you say to start with is the biggest belief you've had to almost kind of shift in their own head to get them to the next level of where they want to be?
It's all self-belief and self-image. People make as much money as they believe they should make. So to someone, I'll always ask somebody, what's the maximum money you've made, or what's a lot of money to you? And they'll say a number in their head, and could be 10K, could be $1 million, could be 10 billion. I was just with a client in Dubai, and he's going through a tough time with something, and he shows me his papers on his desk. He's like, this portfolio I manage is $500 million. And he just shows me the number because it's on his desk. And he's like, but I still can't get myself to feel confident in this other area of my life. So it doesn't matter how much money you actually have and how much material you have. At every level, there's another devil. So the self-belief and the confidence are going to be two of the biggest things. And I'll always ask people, how confident are you? Or even if I ask you, like 1 to 10, how confident would you rate yourself?
9.
So you're 9 out of 10 confidence. But you see how you said it a little bit like a question?
I had to think about it.
You're like 9?
Yeah.
Right? You was like, I'm not sure. Well, you are 100% confident that you're 9 out of 10 confidence, meaning you're 100% confident that you're not fully confident. Because if you were fully confident, it would be a 10 out of 10, right? But what is confidence? Because people have this idea of what confidence is. It's like this Andrew Tate figure, or this very, I'm driving a lamp. It's none of that. What real confidence is actually just feeling comfortable inside of your own body. So if I ask you, like, how confident would you feel maybe doing a coaching call with your clients, right?
10.
Because why? It's so easy for you. It's comfortable. You've done it a million times. It's just, you can do it with your eyes closed, right? And probably right now you've done a bunch of podcasts, so you're just chilling, having a good time. But then if I said to you, okay, you're going to go and, speak in front of the president of the United States, you might feel less confident. You might feel nervous. Why? Because you're less comfortable, you're less familiar. So one of the main things that we do with what I do with clients is I get them into a state where whatever the reality is that they want to get to becomes easy to them. It feels like they've already experienced it. And so when you feel like you've already experienced it, what that does is it changes you on an identity level. It physically affects your brain chemistry. So it creates new neural pathways in your mind. But it basically just makes you believe that you belong where you want to be. And the only reason why people don't get where they want to be is because they don't believe they actually deserve to be there.
And is that why you think a lot of people then end up, because I see this all the time with entrepreneurs we work with, they get a little bit of progress and I literally see them just self-sabotage themselves. They're like, oh yeah, I've decided to go to like Bali for 3 months and then I'm only going to work an hour a day and then the time zone's also awful for my clientele. I'm like, I can just see the same patterns on repeat with certain people.
Yeah. People self-sabotage themselves all the time. I'll most of the examples I'll give will be anonymous, but some I can say. But another guy, multi-billionaire, and has everything you could possibly want in his life. Went out after the other day, felt a lot of stress and anxiety. Went and had a drink at a bar. The next thing you know, he's crashing his car and he's in prison. Why did that happen? Well, it happened because on a deeper subconscious level, subconsciously, he didn't feel like he belonged where he now was. Part of him felt guilty, shameful for things that he'd done, and he didn't feel like he deserved to be there. And so he took actions for him to no longer be there. So basically fuck that up, essentially. People do this on all levels, whether it's, they're just starting their business and they just won't post content, right? Or they maybe get some success. Fear of failure is always a thing that people will say that they have. Fear of success, fear of failure, they're the same thing, because actually most people are more scared of being successful than they are failing. Because fear of failure is not even real, because if you fail by yourself in your own room and nobody knows about it, suddenly you're not scared about it anymore. So you're actually fearful of other people's perception. Fear of success is, okay, what if I become successful? I then get in the limelight a little bit or whatever happens, and then I fail. Now what's happening is you're actually scared of other people's perception of you failing at that level again. So it's exactly the same thing. So these mental battles will happen in the mind, and most people are unconscious that they even happen. Or maybe you go and do some therapy and then you become aware of these things. Great, now you're aware, but has it actually changed? So an example of this is I had a client, he's actually in the same industry as you, in online fitness coaching, and he'd been at the same revenue mark for about 2 years. So it was about 100K per month, maybe 150. And he'd done the best. He actually saw me with doing a session with Will Brown. That's how he found me. He DM'd me on Instagram. Next day we meet. He tells me I'm stuck here. I know I can do more, but I just can't get myself to do the actions, right? Whether it's showing up on YouTube, like filming out, just like basic things that he obviously knows how to do. He's paid hundreds of thousands to coaches to do, but he's just not doing it. Why? When we got down deep into it, there was certain events that happened to him in his past that were affecting him subconsciously, that was stopping him from taking the actions, and fear that he didn't even know were happening. If you ever saw that, there was this interview once where Andrew Tate debated a therapist. It's like a really good interview. I highly recommend people watch it. And it's Tate versus therapist, right? He even hired that therapist to come and work on him. And he knew what his problems were, but still they hadn't changed. We did a first session together. This was a few months ago. Next month, he did 300K within 37 days, 466K the next month. And now he'll be on his path to millions a month. And there was not one single business strategy that we went through that he didn't already know. It was just about upgrading his identity and self-image to the level where he just automatically will act in accordance with that. And that's the thing is you can use willpower, you can use force, that can get you really far, but it's always going to feel hard. And yeah, you need to work hard in order to be successful to a degree. But if it's only reliant on hard work, you're just going to burn out eventually, right? There's only so much you can physically do. So with the subconscious mind and this kind of work, it's more like if you go to a neurosurgeon. You go to a neurosurgeon, you don't say, all right, yeah, give me the scalpel, I'm going to remove the tumor. You just say, you do your job, remove this thing from me so I can go back to being healthy, right? It's kind of the same way with this, is you have whatever the limitation is removed or the fear removed, and then you can just go and automatically get the success that you want.
Quick interjection to the podcast. I know a lot of people watching the podcast haven't yet subscribed. I have one small favor to help us get bigger and better guests to give you more value. It's hit the subscribe button. I appreciate it massively. Do you think a big part of this problem is you don't know what you don't know and people don't know the thing that's blocking them? Like, for example, I remember I went to John Berardi kind of like intensive. Sorry, John DeMartini intensive.
Oh yeah,
and
all this stuff.
It was actually in Istanbul in Turkey, and like 99%, it was kind of weird, like 99% of the room were Turkish women, and it was like me and like 3 other people who spoke English. So he basically just kind of like concentrated on me for like 2 days, and he kind of pulled me apart on a load of things from my kind of like background and like childhood, and like that really opened my eyes into some things that I wasn't aware of. And then I did some work again with a therapist last year that then kind of pulled more things out in terms of like my behavior, maybe from like emotions and relationships or whatever, that now that I'm more aware of it, it's easier for me to almost improve my decision making.
Yeah. Clarity is one of the biggest things. Everyone has blind spots. And if you don't think you have blind spots or you don't think you have limitations, you're just blind, or you're just too egotistical to let yourself to see it, right? But like the most successful people, like I know one of the things you probably ask is like, what's the difference with the billionaire people to the non-billionaire people? And one of the, like, here's the thing with hypnosis, with what I do, most people think it's like, pocket watch, man. I actually have a pocket watch for Halloween. I'm gonna, everyone's been asking me to do it. I'm going to bring out a pocket watch, but it's just like, there's this perception in your mind of what you think that is, or astrology or whatever these different left field topics are. Right. And most people don't think they're real. Any billionaire that I speak to, they're like, oh yeah, of course. Like they're just, of course I would do it. I've either done it or I'm aware of it, right? Why? Because if you want to get exceptionally different results to everybody else, it just requires taking completely different actions to everybody else. And I think, and you'll know this from doing the podcast, like the more you learn, the more you realize you just don't know. And that's the best thing about life, because it means that life is just a continual learning journey. And ultimately it's that growth that you get, whether it's personally, whether it's professionally, whether it's physically, that actually genuinely creates that fulfillment. That's why you can be a billionaire but still feel deeply unfulfilled, which is most of the ones that I work with. Actually, they're not coming to me because they're like, I want to make more money. They know how to solve that. They know how to make money. They'd spend any amount of money to get the fulfillment back, to let go of whatever weight is they are still carrying, and they just can't figure out how to do. They'll pay any amount of money to do that. So it's that cheesy saying, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, it does to a degree, but it also doesn't to another degree. So that's one of the biggest things I see with them. And I think there's levels to it. I think you have to go through those levels to be able to really have that realization of like, okay, what's actually important? What are the things that I really value? And it's like a self-actualization journey. If you ever seen like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's exactly like that. You have to get your basic, you got to be able to have food, shelter, water. then you start looking at your relationships, then you start looking at, building your wealth, all of these kind of things. And eventually, why is it that everybody, even Hormozy was talking about meditation the other day, right? He's like, eventually everyone gets there, eventually, but it's just what route you take.
Well, I think it's at that point you've solved every other game and every other problem, and you probably sit there and think like, am I actually happy? What do I do now?
Yeah.
And that's probably where I think people probably feel a bit lost maybe at that point.
Totally.
Like a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, the purpose is key, particularly for men. Well, it's men and women, but particularly for the men, I find it's usually when they're unhappy, they just don't feel like what they're doing is purposeful. So I have clients one of my clients, Jake Trent, he's like a YouTuber, crushes it, millions of subscribers, got all these businesses, these big e-com companies, and he's like, I just don't feel purpose from what I'm doing. So then I did some hypnosis work with him he wanted to become a professional motorbike driver from never driving a motorbike. So we were in Lake Como earlier this year. He's got his bike on, he's got his girlfriend. I'm on a freaking moped because I can't even drive a motorbike. Behind him, driving with him, and he's like, I think I'm gonna do a race. I'm like, bro, you can't even drive a bike. What do you mean? He's like, no, I'm being serious. So we do some sessions together. He just goes and does his first motorbike race, right? And it's like all of these things that you don't even think about, like these passions, these other things that you could do actually unlock so much. And I think, take entrepreneurs like Richard Branson, for example. He's the billionaire that all billionaires want to be. Why? Because he's living on an island, he's kite surfing, he's got this life where he's got complete freedom. Dude doesn't even wear shoes half the time. And realistically, like that's what most people actually want. But the reason why people are attracted to that is because it's actually just fully being authentic to who you are. And that only comes through going through this inner journey yourself to figure out what is actually authentic to you. Everyone's sort of looking outward to try and solve inward problems. But really, the thing that will always trump everything is just being able to figure out who you truly are. It creates a magnetism to you that just pulls things in that are seemingly unexplainable, but they are explainable. On a simple level, if you go, I like that person's vibe, or I don't like that person's vibe, and you just kind of feel it, that's a sense, and that can actually be used. A lot of the best business owners use that gut instinct, and it will lead them in the right direction, even if logically their mind is going against it. And I don't know if you've ever had a situation like that where you've like gone against your gut. I definitely have. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, why didn't I just
it's myself? Not a good idea, but you just do it anyway.
Yeah. Because why? There's a program running in the mind based on maybe some kind of fear, maybe some kind of limitation. And that's the test in the moment. It's like, can you overcome whatever that thing the mind is saying, and then act differently? And then when you act differently, you get a different result. And then it builds this kind of relationship with yourself of just being able to trust your gut. And then that has always led me to completely unexpected and better places than I could have even imagined.
If you think about like your subconscious mind, a lot the limiting beliefs people have, how much of that stems from people's childhood, or what's the main thing that kind of creates those mental blocks?
The majority of it comes from childhood. So 0 to 8 years old is when most of the programming happens. So what even is hypnosis? Hypnosis is a state that you're in. It's an altered brainwave state. It's called theta. And the primary brainwave state children are in is this theta brainwave state. So to understand what that's like, it's like that state when you wake up in the morning, when you're awake, but you still kind of feel a bit asleep and a bit dreamlike. You're conscious, but you're kind of in between worlds a little bit. Or maybe you're brushing your teeth and in the shower and those thoughts come through, or driving the car and you kind of go on autopilot.
You don't remember the drive.
You don't even remember the drive, but you did it.
Yeah.
But you just weren't there like fully. That's that state. So for children, they're primarily in that brainwave state. That's why children can learn rapidly, pick up new skills, new languages, and why they're these just supercomputers, right? But what happens is as you get older, that starts to change and they get conditioned. And basically the beliefs that go in from their parents, their school systems shape them. So if someone is lucky enough to have parents who have amazing belief systems and they've dealt with a lot of their trauma and they're giving them all the right reinforcement, great. But that's not most people. Most people are having shitty programming. For example, for me, like my parents are amazing. I always remember one of the things that I asked my dad for a PlayStation when I was 10. I'm half Indian, so I have an Indian dad who came here flew to the UK from being like wealthy in Africa to being in poverty in the UK because they had to leave everything behind. And I asked him one day, can I have a PlayStation? And he just was like, what do you think, money grows on trees? And me being a 10-year-old was like, well, money's from paper, paper's from trees. So technically, yes, didn't go down well with my Indian dad. Don't do that to any Indians out there. But in that moment, it planted a belief system in my head, right? Of like lack, of scarcity. And unconsciously, that gave me certain beliefs about money in that moment, which played out into my life, where I would have this lack and fear and scarcity around money. And so these things happen and we don't even know that they're happening for the majority of their time. And so the key is to be able to, first of all, realize when they're showing up and then be able to remove them and get them out of your head. Because your mind is just a computer. You have your conscious mind, you have your subconscious mind. Your conscious mind is about 1% of your mind. Your subconscious mind is like 99% of your mind. So it's like 20 bits of information the conscious mind can process versus 50 million bits of information that the subconscious can process. So it's like having a Nokia 1 versus a quantum supercomputer. Like the Nokia 1 is you trying to say, like, I'm just going to willpower my way through this. And it's like, why am I eating badly? Why am I not working on my business? Why do I keep sabotaging myself? Why do I keep having these bad habits? It's because your subconscious mind is programmed to work against you. That's why. It's not a willpower problem. It's a programming problem.
Quick introduction to the podcast. I want to make this specifically for you to help you achieve everything you want in life. So I have one small ask. Let me know what you actually want. If there's anything you want to see specifically on the podcast, drop it in the comments. If there's anything you specifically want to learn about in the podcast, drop it in the comments or message me on Instagram. Now back to the podcast. Do you think, so this is one of the reasons I'm a kind of advocate for Dubai, and we kind of talked about this, about you moving here, is that if you change your environment, do you think that can also change your subconscious? Like once you've been settled in a certain area for a while?
There's three main things that you can change. One of them is your environment, one is your thoughts, and one is your emotions, essentially. So I have this tattoo on my arm which says IS equals ER, internal state equals external reality. Your internal state is affected by three things: your thoughts, created by the mind; emotions, created by the body; and your environment. So environment's probably the easiest one to change quickly, because you can change where you live or who you surround yourself with by. Because what that does is it influences you to think differently, right? If you're in a shitty situation around people who pull you down, that's going to affect you no matter how strong-willed you are, because it's going into your mind. Versus if you're around everybody else who's super kind, super abundant, everyone's just winning, like everyone just lifts you up. Naturally, you're just going to be the average of those people. So environment's one of the biggest. The thoughts, so that's the external one. The internal ones are the thoughts and emotions. When you basically, everything is governed by your belief systems. So what you believe to be true about the world will create your identity, and it will create the actions that you take. So if you have recurring thoughts in your mind that are going around that are not serving you, that are negative, those quiet thoughts in your mind, or maybe it's your parents' thoughts in your mind from years ago, right? Well, I'll always find this with clients. It'll be like, oh, like why are you too scared to go and like scale your business? And it's like something their dad said, maybe you should have gone and get a job or something like that. And in their mind, they view that as like losing love and connection with their parents or approval or whatever it is, right? So once you can identify the thoughts, you can realize, okay, wait, do I actually believe these thoughts? Are they even mine? Because those thoughts didn't even come from you. They came from somewhere else. And if you imagine that most of who you are is just a product of your surroundings, then suddenly you would be very careful about what you allow in your surroundings, whether it's physically, whether it's on your digital environment. I went and saw Dan Martell yesterday.
Okay.
Honestly, I didn't really know the guy that much. A client of mine was his client. Dan Martell was his client. So my client was like, oh, just go along to the event. He wasn't even here. I was like, sure. I wake up yesterday. My girlfriend goes, oh, what are you doing? So I was like, I'm seeing this Dan Martell guy. She's like, who is he? We're walking down the marina. And I literally think Dan Martell in my mind. He then is driving towards me on an electric scooter. And I go, oh, that's who he is. And he just like shows up as soon as I think it. I'm like, okay, weird, whatever. Then I go back home. I go on my phone, and the first post is a guy basically saying how Dan Martell like plagiarized this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that post. Yeah, so I see that post, and I'm like, okay, cool, interesting. And then a friend comes to me saying something about Dan Martell. Then I go to this event, and he's there, right? And it's like, we live in this world where our physical reality, our digital reality, everything is so interconnected now. on a level that we don't even understand. Like we understand it on basic levels, like for example, on social media, it will listen to what you say, it will show you the content based on what you say, right? But that same process has been going on in the way that we interface with reality forever. And we don't even realize that it's happening. And so if we understand that your thoughts truly do create your reality because they create your belief systems and your belief systems shape your actions, then if you truly knew how powerful that was, you would never allow a negative thought to ever go into your mind because you'd understand that that's actually shaping you, that's creating you.
What would be, so like, this is one of the things that I find helpful that I personally do. If I want to achieve X, Y, Z, I write every morning in present tense, like I have X amount net worth, I make this amount every month, to try and like delusionally talk it into existence. And the same thing in terms of like vision boards on my phone. So like I had a vision board, I'd live on the Palm at the start of the year and it happened. A vision board last year, I got a supercar and it happened. It, like, how much of an effect do you think small little things like that on your subconscious mind kind of plays into your daily actions?
It's everything, because it affects your mindset, and your mindset shapes your results, right? Everyone says it's like 80% mindset, 90% mindset, whatever, and then the rest is strategy. Well, that is directly going into your subconscious constantly. So it's massive. The key though is you have to actually believe it. That's the key, because somebody else might take that advice listening and then they might go, right, I'm a billionaire. Cool. You know, Charlie said, write down what I want. But then if they don't actually believe that on an internal level, then it's actually going to work against them, because there's going to be doubt that comes in, right? So it's going to have a different effect internally, mentally, emotionally. So the key is to actually write and create things that it's not even about how big the goal is or anything like that. It's about finding out what is actually aligned for you. Because if it's somebody else's goal, you're not really going to connect to it that much. So you have to be able to actually say, okay, what is it that I actually want? And that can sometimes take a little bit of soul searching, right? To figure out what do I actually want. By the way, you can still get things that even aren't, like, you know, people do it all the time, but you got to be careful with what you wish for, because oftentimes you'll get it and it might not be what you want.
Everything has a price. I think what you were referring to those like mimetic goals, where like people basically copy someone else's goal thinking because Charlie's done X, I want to do that. And then they realize they don't actually want the thing. Yeah,
exactly. And there's nothing wrong with taking other people's goals for inspiration, because that's maybe how you find out what is actually the right goal for you. For example, at this event yesterday with Dan, he was saying how everyone was asking about parenting. There was a lot of parents there, and they was like, how do you think about homeschooling and all this kind of stuff? And he said, look, my kids, they're in my world. I'm not here to serve them. They're a part of my world, and they're my responsibility, right? And that's like not what most parents would say. Most parents would say, you know, like the opposite in some way. And that was interesting. I was like, that's actually a really interesting thought. And I have never heard anyone say that before. Does that mean I'm going to adopt his belief system? Well, in my case, not exactly. But it gives me a different perspective, and I can see if I resonate with that or not. I don't need to blindly copy it just because he's someone in an authority position, but I can see how he does it, and then I can sort of decide how, if I want to do it. This is why like masterminds and these coaching containers can be so good when you've got the right people in it, because we actually learn by osmosis. We do not learn by what people tell us to do. It's like children, right? Children don't do what you do. They don't do what you say. They do what you do. And we're exactly the same. So this is why this is why the environment's so important. But if most people are being honest, there are certain people in their environment that they shouldn't be spending as much time with, but they're still holding on to it out of some kind of fear. And if they were just able to let that go, immediately they would have an insane amount of progress. That's why there's this Dubai effect of people, when they move here, they immediately become so much more successful, because it's physically made them let go of the place that they were before and allowed them to step into a new identity. It just makes that process so much easier, right? Because now if I come here and in the UK, I'm this Ibrahim everyone knows here, I'm the billionaire hypnotist, and that's who everyone knows me. I go to an event like yesterday, people come up to me, oh, hey, like Ibrahim, like you're the hypnotist, right? And what's that doing? It's reinforcing this identity onto me. So that environment change allows you to do that, because it lets you just be whoever you want to be. The secret is, though, you don't even have to wait for an environment change. You can just decide, and you can just decide to be whoever you want to be.
Because you did that. You previously had a marketing business for real estate agents, running ads. And then I listened to you talk about this previously, that you just made a decision, I'm now the hypnotist.
Yeah, literally. So I was at October. So 1 year ago, almost to the day, I was in Dubai in October. I was at Will's Mastermind.
Yeah, I think we met there.
And I was still running the agency. I'd also been coaching business owners for quite a long time, you know, and I was realizing that the mindset piece was a big part of it. And I was in this like push and pull. They were all telling me, yeah, but you can't sell mindset. Like no one buys that. Like it has to be, you know,
limit belief though.
No, exactly. But so here's exactly what happened. All of these people at the time, it's funny because they were ahead of me in terms of business. Now almost everybody who told me that I'm now ahead of. It's funny just in terms of like physical terms. But they told me, you can't do that. And I believed them for a period of time until I didn't. Until I was able to create enough belief inside of myself that actually that's not even true. Like my journey started 12 years ago when I was hypnotized at a Tony Robbins event. I went in shy, I went in insecure, I didn't have a business. Next thing you know, I'm walking over fire, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Everyone's like, what happened to you? You're this new person like that within a couple of days. What happened? Well, I didn't realize until years later that hypnosis was one of the things used at that event. So I learned from the guy who taught him, who created NLP, Richard Bandler, and I started using it. And then I started to immediately see, oh my God. By this point last year, my friends were just business owners doing well. So I just started using it with them. And then I started seeing change so fast that it just didn't even seem real. But the results were there. They'd start making the money. They could go and cold approach the girl. They'd have the confidence, like whatever the thing is that they were missing. And so I just literally changed my identity. I just made a decision. And I have it, it's kind of cool because I was with my girlfriend and I was telling her when I knew nothing about what I was going to do, I was like, I'm going to be the best hypnotist in the world. I'm going to be hypnotizing billionaires. And she's like, she believes in me a lot. But even she was like, was it really? Like, you sure? Like,
but
okay.
you said an interesting word there. You said will, not want.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in the world that I created, it's already done. So it's like now when a billionaire comes to me with X problem, it's not a surprise because in my mind it's already happened. So what happens is it's created that familiarity, and going back to the beginning of what we talked about, that comfortability. I'm comfortable with that situation because then I've already created and self-hypnotized myself for that reality to be true. So when it happens, because it will happen, then it's just normal. It still feels great. It's awesome, but it's not a surprise. And so one last thing I'll add, and the reason why this is so key, and I'll use that example, add the other client who's the fitness coach that I work with, the reason why this is so key is because what a lot of people do is they'll hit this invisible glass ceiling in their business, 100K a month, $1 million a month, 10 million a month, whatever. And something inside of them will believe that on a subconscious level, that's the limit that they should be at from whatever the programming is. And so the key here is, you're never going to have growth that only looks like that in a straight line. It's never going to happen. But what most people's growth looks like, this squiggly line. But what it can look like is more like this, up and then flattens out for a bit, up and then flattens out a bit. It can look like that. And the way to do that is to be able to, at every level, as soon as you hit the goal, recreate the identity that is required to get to the next goal, so that the version of you is essentially always ahead of the reality that you're experiencing. And then you'll just constantly be able to level up, and you won't then need to self-sabotage. For example, this month we'll hit another record month, and I'm not going out popping bottles, doing crazy shit. We'll celebrate a little bit, but I know where I am in terms of my whole potential, and it's like less than 1%. So it's like the journey is so far to go. Like, yes, externally it looks good from the outside, but I'm nowhere near where I know that I'm going to be. And then you just apply that same principle at every level, and you can create anything that you want.
Now, if you enjoyed this clip and you're a coach, creator, or a business owner, and you want help in terms of how to scale your business using ads, AI, content, marketing, a lot of things we talk about on the show, then hit the link at the top line of our description in the YouTube video. You can book on a call with us and we'll walk through the whole process, audit your business, and show you where there's huge, huge opportunities for you to scale.